We're going down to the underground now. I'm showing you some of the skyscrapers. We're going down on the tour, down on the underground, and here you're seeing the earliest part of Seattle where it all started. We'll be out of the rain in a little bit. I'm showing you the people. There's Gillian. You can just see the back of her going in.
The floor is uneven down at the bottom, so be careful when you get there.
This is our Oyster guide.
And have a nice time. I'm not coming with you.
Oh no.
No, I'm going back to the pub.
Hey, you didn't tell us about the gold thing that came from the Klondike. That
The gold rush?
gave you your first. No, a ship came from the Klondike, brought £1 million in those days of gold.
Two tons.
Yes. Yes.
We'll talk about that.
Yes, right. What? I'm coming, he's talking to you, my love. We're going down now. We're going down into the down on the underground, they call it. This was the original area. You can see it's warm down here. I'm taking my mac off, and I'll just span you around, and you're able to see. Yeah. You can see the photos of the earlier times. I'll just see if I can upload these photographs of the earlier Seattle before it grew into the place it is now, with those skyscrapers we showed you. See, that's one of the original buildings. And these are the houses that a certain Mr. Kratt built.
Well, welcome to the underground. Is it everything you dreamed it would be? And more. And so much more. Well, this is the corn building that we're in right now. This room was originally a mercantile, or a hardware store of sorts. One of the things we notice is that the floor is not quite even. This is because this level that we're on right now, something to keep in mind, this level is the original tide flat level. That's why the floor is buckling, because there's nothing below the floor really except mud. And the floor is about 100 years old, so it's taken about 100 years for the weight of the cement floor to settle. And the floor is still settling, they say, about 1/8 of an inch a year. The building is set on foundations that go down to bedrock through clay, 40 to 60 feet, old growth. Douglas fir and cedar, they're doing quite well. From the 1890s, after the fire, they built another platform to build the old buildings on. So they're doing quite well. The floor settles, but not the building. This is good news, you would agree. Yes, Paul, we agree. I knew you would. Here's the aftermath of the fire. Excuse me, show you. The aftermath of the fire. This is a good visual on what happens to the neighborhood. It takes about a day for this to happen. The fire is an accident, and I will talk about it. But what creates the underground happens, or starts happening the day after the fire. And I'll talk to you about why. But the fire and the subsequent rebuild are very much a part of each other. I'm going to tell you about them. But I can do it better around the corner in front of the hotel, so come with me. But that's a good visual. Just keep that in your mind. The devastation down here is complete.
That was the guide explaining we're in the corn house, we're moving out. These are the original build of Seattle, which burnt down mainly because of the situation, what they got. They built it in on the flats of a low tide, and they had terrific sewer problems. We're just querying whether it were methane gas that started the fire and the explosion, but it wiped the whole of the area which the start of the port of Seattle out in, I think he said 1871. See, we're going through. This used to be they built a sawmill here because they got everything. They got the sawmill, they got the forest either side, they got the tar going in, and all the sewage came from high up, because there's two mountains flank it out. There's two mountains, and there's the two lagoons, and the Pacific Ocean is just at the back, and it's on an inlet. The port of Seattle now. I'm watching, darling. My wife's telling me to watch the step, and I'm keeping my eyes on it and try to talk to you at the same time, which is very difficult. Here we are. We're coming up to the area now. You'll be able to see it, okay? And just to let you know, it's raining here in Seattle, just the same as England.
Come on down. You don't want to get too spread out there. Thank you.
Mm. I'm not talking to you because he's ushering all the crowd. He's going to tell us
There
the
we
history.
go. Thank you. Okay. Well, let's talk about the fire. June 6th, 1889. It's the date of the fire. That morning, a guy by the name of John Back is heating up bricks of glue in a cabinet shop called Claremont and Company. The cabinet shop is about 4 blocks north of where we are right now, up First Avenue, approximately 1st and Madison today, about 3 stoplights up. Now, glue back in the 1800s, back then, 1880s, came in solid bricks. What you had to do was heat it to soften up to be able to use it. This is what Mr. Back was doing. Now, he got the glue boiling. Now, it's wood glue, right? It's pretty thick stuff. If it's boiling, I'm thinking it's too hot. Didn't need to be that hot. Certainly, the glue was hot enough to ignite, which it does accidentally. A piece of wood falls on it, or the pot of glue tips over. Something happens to ignite it. Mr. Back panics, grabs a pail of water, and throws it on this glue fire. He should have smothered it, right?
Yeah.
He's essentially throwing water on a grease fire. A violent reaction occurs. The flaming glue erupts all over the shop. Flaming globulets of glue rain down on the floor of the cabinet shop, which consisted of sawdust and turpentine. Above the cabinet shop is a paint shop. The wind is blowing out of the northwest southerly down First Avenue. Hadn't rained in about a week. Everything is made of wood. Perfect conditions for a fire. The fire first gets to 2 hardware stores, which had just received that week 20 to 40 tons of ammunition. When the firemen first get on the scene, they report that the fire itself is shooting at them. On the manifests, along with the ammunition for the shops, are also kerosene, paints, oils, and of course, dynamite. We're off to the races at that point. The fire carriages are dispatched to put the fire out, get stuck in the mud of low tide attempting to access water from the bay, and don't even have enough length of hose to reach from the extreme low tide up to where the fire was, even if they had wanted to. 45 minutes it takes them to haul them out of the mud and get them back up where the fire was. The building owners get together and create a fire block, which means blowing up a building before the fire in the path of it, so it's got nothing to burn when it gets there. Well, none of the guys want to blow up their own building, but they're all perfectly happy to blow their neighbor's building up. So they can't decide. They squabble. By the time they blow a building up, that one had already caught on fire. It was too late. Don't! They throw their hands up at that point and say, let it burn. 12 to 14 hours, the fire burns Seattle unchecked. 33 blocks of this neighborhood are burned right back down to the mud. You saw the photograph. Our friend, Mr. Rudyard Kipling, if you know who he is,
Yeah.
visits Seattle the day after the fire and quotes, "The thumb of God has smudged the face of Seattle." I love that quote. Mr. Kipling is very descriptive, but he is also accurate in his description of the neighborhood. Gone completely. The miracle of the event, nobody dies, which I can't believe. For all the mistakes they make, I haven't told you all of them, nobody dies. That's the miracle. The next phase starts to happen with relief money coming in from around the country to help rebuild. This was common. We sent money elsewhere when other cities had done this to themselves. It was their turn to help us. Boston and San Francisco, 2 of the cities that were sending money, and more was on the way. this was common. Uncommon was the building and shop owners in the neighborhood to see all the influx of money coming in. This is their reason to be here, is to make a buck. And they realize they can achieve this goal by rebuilding Seattle. So they start building as quickly as they can to achieve the goal. Really, the guys that are building complain that they have to reinforce the bottom of their boots with extra layers of leather because the coals they're building on from the fire hadn't cooled. They barely wait for the fire to be put out. They shovel the smoldering coals out of the neighborhood so that they can build things, dump the coals out in the mud of the tide flat here, and catch the pier on fire out there. They're like, don't worry, we'll build another one. It'll be fine. Well, they are single-minded. The only thing they know for sure, the faster they build their new building, the sooner they open up and make a buck. But no more wood, brick, or stone this time. Up these buildings go as fast as they can be built. The city has something to say and says, wait, stop, hold on. We have to solve our sewage and drainage problems, guys. Our crappers have shot at us for 8 years. Help us. The city begs and pleads for financial assistance from the building owners. The city suggests to these guys hydraulic sluicing, which is a mining technique. Strip mining. Let's wash the dirt off the hill to the east, down into the neighborhood, and fill things in. Fine idea if you have 8 to 10 years to wait and want to pay for it. None of the building owners and business owners want to do either of those. And essentially, you tell the city to go jump in the sound. We're not doing any of it. We're not waiting, and we're not paying. They had already started building, right? So that's all they care about. They're single-minded. They really go, go away. The city goes, fine, we understand. We'll figure it out ourselves. We don't need you. We'll do the next cheapest option. We'll show you. And this is for the city left to their own devices. They raised the streets up out of the tide in the entire neighborhood. This wall is part of that effort. 24 to 27 blocks raise up out of the mud. We call it the raising of the streets. It's the only neighborhood they do this to because it's the only neighborhood on the mud. Okay, well, what are the specs? Well, the city's successful when they do this in solving their sewage and drainage problems. But in true Seattle fashion, they create a whole other set of problems. Okay, the specs are, this is a street. This is Occidental Street. You're on the sidewalk, original sidewalk behind you was originally the hotel. Where the sidewalk and the wall meet is the curb of the street. There's this wall here and an identical wall to it on the other side of the street. What they do is they surround the entire block with the walls, creating the streets into troughs. The troughs are then filled in with everything they can get their hands on. All the debris from the fire, dirt off the hill. Basically, it's a dumping ground. Everything in the kitchen sink goes inside in between. They fill up halfway with dirt and debris, install new sewage and drainage systems inside, fill up the rest of it, brick or cobble over the top. Systems that are inside the streets are still gravity systems, right? It's the 1890s, no pumps. So let's say my forearm is the water's edge. This is flat here on the mud flat. If gravity's going to take anything anywhere, they have to create a new slope. And they do this with the streets, the heights of them, like steps from the water's edge as you go east up to 6th Avenue. So 1st Avenue is the lowest because it's the closest to the bay. They only raise those up to about 8 to 10 feet high. 6th Avenue, the farthest away, they raise up 35 feet, almost 2 stories. And they're also washing the tops of the hills down as they do it. So they're doing 2 things. My forearm is Cherry Hill, let's say. This is the mud. They raise the streets up here like this and wash the tops of the hills down. So they do 2 things. From this to this, which is the 15 to 18% grade you see up Gessler today.